All right, guys, today's plant of focus is soybean. This is what makes a lot of people perk up when they hear the words I set soybean out for my deer or in my food plots. Generally, a person that hears that would think you're pretty serious about growing big deer. This plant is probably the most popular and one of the highest rated nutritional plants you can buy. Uh, Now, there are pros and cons to these, and I'm going to get into that and to some other nutritional details on here as well. So this may also be another multiple video segment on this, but anything I can do to help you out and select maybe a blend that you would like to try based on the information I can find for you, or if you happen to find some study contradicting what I have or what I've stated, then I'm not going to be offended by that. By all means, you can send me the links, the pictures, or whatever about that study, and this will be included in the post, because the more knowledgeable people are, I think the more advancements you'll see in your deer. So let's get into the cons of soybean. There are a few cons here, but it's not like overly bad cons. One of the problems with soybean is generally people tell you if you're going to set soybean out, you need a lot of space in order to handle browse pressure. The average, I guess you could say, pro planter for deer would probably recommend a bean field of 10 acres. And on the average, I would agree with that, but there are many factors that go into why would I need a 10-acre bean field? I don't have that many deer. And if you have lower deer populations, you can get away with much smaller bean fields, wink, wink, like mine. My deer population is rising, but it is not on the level of maybe somebody on the Cumberland Plateau where the deer population is much higher. I mean, if you look at the state of Tennessee, by the time you get to Nashville, they are overrun with deer. So a food plot like this probably would not do very well. So get a gauge of how many deer you think you have, and that will help eliminate that con if you're smart and put out the right amount of food for your deer. Now, another thing is soybean has a thing about other competition competing with it. It grows slower. The protein levels start dropping because you're sharing nutrients with other species of plants. Now, that only really gets to be a problem if the weed threat gets too high. So here, I had weeds in here not too long ago, and I have sprayed out a good portion of these. I don't care about little small pockets here that I've missed, but soybean will slow down and it will allow weeds to eventually take over and choke it out. So that is a con that you have to be careful for. Another con is the planting rate of soybean. I have experimented with different levels of soybean. I've planted at a rate of 30 pounds an acre, 40 pounds an acre, 50, 60, and 70. And the goal, if you're trying to remove spraying to fix a con, is canopy. Soybean needs to canopy. And this is a canopy right here in front of you. So once this canopies, it will choke out other competition. Now this canopied first because there was no competition here because the weeds didn't come up. But if you have weeds and you end up having to spray it out, once the soybean canopy's over, you're golden and it will keep the weeds at bay. So that is a con that you have to be careful of. If you sow it at the right seeding rates, soybean will come up fairly quickly and leaf out fairly quickly. And when it's planted at the right amount, it will choke out weeds at a much faster rate than sparse planting. Even though that's groundhog damage, but sparse planting would look something like this or a little thicker, and weeds would dominate in some type of planting like that. So just be careful about how much you set out. Don't be this is one plant, you probably don't want to underdo it. I'm starting to lean more toward the heavy side now when it comes to sowing soybean. Another con, For anybody in small plots, even though I do not fence mine off because my plot can handle the pressure, it will require more money to buy fencing, electric fencing. Then you have to do more manual labor to put the fence up and protect your beans. So as these start growing and maturing, at some point you can take the fence down if you choose to, or you just want it to grow as tall as it can and produce the pods. So it's extra work if you're afraid of too much browse pressure taking out your soybean. So that's a little more work, and it requires, I mean, not many other species in your food plot really require fencing. Most other plants are fairly adequate at handling browse, but soybean can be an issue at times. Now let's get into some pros, and I don't think I've really missed in. Oh yeah, soybean is. This is one last comment I'll mention, and this is based on experience. Soybean will not grow well in poor ground. If you have poor ground and don't have the money to fix it, I would highly recommend changing your species of plant. So you could literally have basically what would look like a stick with a leaf or two on it. Let me get up here and show you one. So it would look like something like this, and your leaf sizes probably wouldn't even be this big. It'd be more like this. It'd be a very scrawny, poor growing plant, and it would not benefit your deer to plant something like that and not care for it. So if you do select soybean, you need to be prepared to spend money for fertilizer or soil amendments, unless you're lucky and blessed with good ground. All right, on to the pros. And this is a fairly large list of pros, large enough where I probably will miss some of these, but I will add it to the post if I find out I've missed one. This is everybody's dream plant of growing a big deer. The reason deer can grow so big with these is the nutrition level that soybean provides. Soybean also produces sugar, which helps give the deer energy. It also kind of sweetens the taste up, really adding to the attractiveness for a deer. Now the protein levels is what everybody likes, because that's what they discovered helps grow those gigantic antlers. And these guys do not miss the show when it comes to protein. The average soybean, at least from Eagle Seed or Real World, I'm not counting a standard soybean, this is the stuff that I plant, will average somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 32 to 36%. This depends on what species you plant. And the champion of the protein levels goes to the big fellow that Eagle Seed offers. They have claims up to 42%. And remember, these field tests that they do are vast fields. I mean, I'd be laughed off the block if I showed them my food plot. The amount of work they do is ridiculous. So huge expanses of ground to try out hundreds of thousands of different species of soybeans. I believe they said there's like 1,000 different soybean species they work with. It's insane, the experimentation that goes on with soybean right now. But getting back onto the protein levels here, that's what definitely allows for fast antler growth. These deer can put on tine height, extra points, helps get with genetic potential. Now there are other nutritional elements in here that are good. You got phosphorus, manganese, zinc, slight low levels of boron in there. It's not high, but boron, like I stated before, is very important. Helps with bone structure for animals and other things. So now this soybean has all this wonderful list of nutrition, which I know I mentioned all of them. Like phosphorus and potassium and stuff like that. That this, even still, if you planted this by itself, will still not get the fullest potential out of your deer. As great as these statistics sound, you still need a mix. And I'll let you in on a secret here of what my opinion is on this in the next video. So we've got all this protein, we got all these nutritional elements. Soybean is classified as a legume, so this operates like clover. I would recommend buying the inoculant. It's a little extra, but Eagle Seed will package it with your purchase for each bag you buy if you go the inoculant route. Definitely a money-saving cost because you're not going to spend all that money for fertilizer. This becomes a nitrogen-fixing plant. And underneath the ground, if you was to pull any one of these plants out of the ground, there will be little nodulars or bumps all over the roots. The more bumps you find, the healthier that plant is. And that is the bacteria functioning by pulling nitrogen out of the air, just like clover, and releasing it into the ground when it has sufficient nitrogen. So your soybean will feed surrounding competition nitrogen. And that is why this is beneficial to have it in a mix with something else, say like the buckwheat I have behind me. All right, let's get on to the next video. Hold on.